Considering that leads us straight into our NRL and Grand Final review of the actual game, the fourth best game of the year, or the fourth good game this year from that list of games. I mean, I want to say I put an end to probably the worst season of NRL, I think, since the Super League. Well, it's finally over. Penrith have won it.
It was the worst administered, I think. Shout out to the players, because I think we did see some of, we spoke at length last week about Tommy Turbo, but then also shout out to Penrith and South. We've seen some really good spectacles, but yeah, the way that it was administered, what we had in Magic Round compared to what we had in the finals, is like watching a different sport. And also the quality of the league between the top tier and the bottom tier sides was stark. But it is a good point that you make there, because it was a good game. And guess what? There's a common theme between these good games. It was low scoring. So no need to keep tweaking the rules to try and see more points. Love seeing a 14-12 battle. It was close up until the dying minutes, and a really good grand final for the new. The monkeys off the back, I suppose, for Ivan Cleary and Nathan Cleary. We did speak earlier in past podcasts, I should say, about Ivan Cleary. He actually had coached the second most games without winning a GF, so he's finally got that under the belt. And there had been a little bit of a knock around Nathan Cleary. Last year, him and the Panthers, the best side by far, and they missed out. And then this year, the complete reverse. Melbourne was the best side throughout the year, and Penrith get the ring. So shout out to them and Nathan Cleary with the Clive Churchill. I do think he deserved it. Boys, what were your thoughts? Could it have gone to anyone else?
Oh, when we were watching it and chatting to each other, we threw out a few names, possibilities, because they'd done one or two good things. But for consistency throughout the full 80 minutes, Nathan Cleary was probably the best man out there. When you talk about a defensive battle that was low scoring, that had to be a lot of grinding game management, well, who do you look at? You look at Nathan Cleary for putting Penrith in the positions they needed to be able to win it. Like, if Southside won it, Cody Walker probably makes sense for some of his brilliance and some of the tries and the attacking that they kind of pushed in that last 20 minutes to even get them close to winning this game. But if you had to pick someone from Penrith, maybe you pick Crichton for his game-winning interception. But outside of that, that's one moment. The Clyfield's got to go to a collective effort for the full 80. And I think Nathan Cleary is a fair assessment and a fair pick for that.
Yeah, I think it was his kicking game which kind of separated the sides there. Monks, did you have any thoughts on that? Cleary deserving, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think just, like Sean said, his game management and his kicking game definitely meant he deserved it. I think looking at stat lines, Toto had a pretty outstanding game for Penrith as well, so he's probably would have been the other shout for me. But again,
I think everyone overlooked forward back for Penrith. That was if I had to pick someone else, I'd probably go through those statistics more detailed and see who made 40 plus tackles, who made the most hit ups, the most run meters, and then you could say, well, hey, that's probably where the game was won, was there. So maybe that's and those guys do all the hard, gritty work, but they don't get the reap the rewards very often.
True, although did one in particular stand out from the others? I suppose that might be the thing there. Just going back to your point there around Toto, I think he had 238 run meters. Didn't get a meat pie, which is unusual for him, but always tops the run meters. Does an unbelievable amount of work for a wing. Pop the question to the misso. So he had that on the back of his mind the whole game. I don't know how he concentrate and arguably be one of the best players on the paddock, and then dropped the knee and proposed, and she said yes. So congrats to Brian Toto. No knock on the misso, and I say this just because of my own sort of man crush on Brian Toto, and even if it was, say, Giselle Bundchen that he had been proposing to, I would still say that she would be punching above her weight with Ryan. Big fan of the man. He's got that cute smile, and he's had a breakout year. He's got a NRL GF under his belt, a State of Origin win under his belt, and for mine, the best winger in the comp by far this year.
Yeah. So I was just doing some quick and big congrats to him as well. I would have been interested to see what happened if they had lost, whether he'd still have gone through it or not. Hey, the end to retail for them. And he had a great match as well. Looking at the statistics for defense, Appy Coruscant probably could have got a shout. 51 tackles made for the match. Someone that probably went out a bit under the radar that had, because he plays second row, Kurt Capewell. The made 40 tackles, had a bunch of meters. Played overall pretty well. So it'd be, Isaiah Yeo, another one, heaps of hit ups, heaps of meters.
And no knock on those guys, but does Penrith win without one of those players? Possibly. Does Penrith win without Cleary? No. I think that's the answer.
I agree with you. And you bring up a really interesting question. Do you think Latrell makes a 2-point difference?
Yeah, it would be very interesting to to try and imagine what could have happened had Latrell been there. We did speak about it last week that no one really expected them to make the GF without their best player. So you could imagine the way that Cody Walker was setting up guys and getting them into space. Latrell sort of makes his own space. If Cody and him were to link up there, possibly we would be talking about a South Sydney premiership. And that's something that Latrell's got to think about. We all saw in Origin. We've seen him, coming through the ranks as a chook and at South City the last few years. One of the best players in the game. Just has to kind of get rid of this brain explosion stuff. Was suspended for what it's ongoing into next year. Yeah,
matches I think in total.
Yeah, and I think with his earlier suspension in the year, I think spent like 10 weeks suspended this year. So a little bit too much out of a player of his caliber. So it is a little bit of shoulda, woulda, coulda, I guess, for Latrell and South fans. If he'd been involved.
Well, luckily for him though, he's still 24, so he's got plenty of time left in the league. Big
time.
So
you go.
Yeah, that's right. Some other notes from the game, of course, it did happen. Suncorp. They did have good crowds. Queensland was very good, and they didn't have any community transmission the 2 days leading up to it, which was excellent news. We were very worried that they'd go kind of the way that we went and kind of the way Melbourne went with their AFL parties and their case numbers where they're currently at. But hey, it went on. The game kicked off, of course, with Matt Burton scoring the first try with a luau assist. He had a very good night. Be interesting to see how he goes at the Dogs. Johnny, of course, had a car going across there. Cody Walker then scores that unbelievable try to get through, and you can see how dangerous he is. Kind of forgotten man a little bit as well this season, I reckon, with how good he's played all season. With, of course, Leo playing next to Cleary all season and makes a challenge. But there's talk that, with Munster's nose candy deal, he's going to probably miss out playing for Australia if there's any international games. That Cody Walker could potentially be your 6.
It seems unlikely that any rugby league internationals will go ahead. But yeah, you are right. Cody came third in the Dally M. One of the best seasons ever, I think, from a 5'8", and was really, that close to being a Clive Churchill medalist. I think was by far and away South's best player in this game.
Yeah. So Panthers take a penalty to go into the half at 8-6. Very close and poised game. Reynolds ties it up straight after the half to make it 8-all. And then there was a lot of good attacking action back and forth and defensive battle. A little bit of acting in there from Cam Murray on an obstruction. He was very good, and he was the other one. He topped the match with 53 tackles, 0 misses. Peps, What are all the memes about for Cameron Murray?
Well, I'm not going to argue with him. He's a good-looking rooster. And I've seen some sort of memes where they're like, the first box is, how hot is she? And then they've got a picture of Cam Murray, and then it's the response is not that hot. He's a good-looking rooster. He was phenomenal. And again, we speak about this imaginary Australian Kangaroos team that we should really be talking about. If it wasn't for the cocoa world that we live in, he would be a shoo-in in that side. He just keeps getting better and better. And with Reynolds going next year, I wouldn't be surprised if Cam Murray is the captain of South Sydney next year.
Yeah, and we'll get to Benji as well, the other senior head in that team. Maybe Cody Walker gets a shout, but maybe be interesting to see how that team gets put together. To finish off the game, the big moment, of course, as I mentioned before, was the intercept. I kind of felt that Souths might have had a little bit of momentum. It was very much a back and forth battle, but they kind of rising to the occasion, looked more attacking than the Panthers did at the point. But Crichton snuffs that out, gets the big intercept, runs away, scores under the posts, makes it 14-8. When you start thinking about, hey, Souths need to try to get back in this game, who do you think about getting tries? You think about Alex Johnson with 29 on the season. And, of course, he does score in the 75th minute. Great setup by Cody Walker going to the left there, puts him over. But we've got to talk about Reynolds. He had the game-tying conversion from right on the edge of the sideline. He started it off right. It was coming back, didn't come back far enough. Michael Ennis did give him a bit of a jinx to saying he drilled it as he's kicked it. But
you know what that was when you have a little putt in golf and someone goes, yeah, that's in, and then it just flips out, and you just go, oh, that wasn't my bad putting, that was you dickhead on the jinx right there. And I tell you what, it did kind of look like it was going to swing back, and it gives some kind of Jonathan Thurston vibes from that 2015 grand final. And it's a cruel game, isn't it? That was the difference in the end. I suppose he had another chance from over 40 metres right at the death there for the 2-point field goal. But look, a champion bloke, and he'll be sorely missed at South. You can't put it down to him. I don't think there's too many people in that pressure situation that would have nailed either of those kicks. But yeah, it's funny how it works out. It's all the tackles, all the hit ups, everything. Point.
So yeah, and that 2-point field goal as well makes it was a rushed attempt. Like they didn't really set up for it, and they kind of realized they're running out of time, and he just whacked it on the boot, hoping for the best, and it barely made it 30 meters and was off to the left, like it was just low, just miskicked it, and you worry about he's missed that opportunity. South's a missed opportunity. It's going to be interesting. That Brisbane team next year, they does have Capewell and Ryan James go up there, so hopefully they'll start to improve up the ladder. Be interesting to see where Souths end up, because they lose him, they lose Benji.
Yeah.
I think they lost. I think
James
is gone.
And Burgess going to the Dragons. So just right there, there's a fair few blokes out the door. Who's going to play 7 is the big question. Will Blake Taff go to play 7, or perhaps some kind of iteration with him and Cody Walker in the halves? It kind of does feel like they've kind of missed their opportunity now. And look, anything can happen. But I think there probably is that feeling amongst South Sydney fans. A lot of them who don't really understand this Reynolds, getting, letting a club legend go, it probably will leave a little bit of a sour taste in South Sydney fans' mouths.
I think their concern with the club was his legs, because he's had multiple leg or like niggles and injuries throughout his career. Long term throwing a deal at him, and they wouldn't give him anything decent. So it was like, stuff here. And then Brisbane was like, here's a 3-year deal. He's like, that's what I wanted, long term security. So I'll take that.
Yeah. Will he be able to turn the corner at Brisbane there? I tell you what, and something that we don't, I hadn't really considered until today. Katoni Staggs, he played a handful of games this year, four or five perhaps. Will he play 6 with Reynolds at 7 next year, or do they have him in the centres and either Albert Kelly or Tyson Gamble with Reynolds? Again, all of this, and we've spoken about it before on the Esky, very conducive to introducing another Brisbane team who could be a legitimate rival straight away.
Yeah. Thank you for the segue, because that kind of leads into the story with the NRL. Kind of came out some news that they'd, it sounds like upped their deal with Foxtel, because they had a $1 billion deal through to 2027 for television rights. So whatever that breaks down over the 8 years, 8 seasons. So what is that, 120 mil a year kind of thing? Quick math. So with they've renegotiated that deal to potentially free up another 100 mil. Wasn't sure if it was 100 mil extra now or over the lifetime of that deal, which again is probably another 12 mil every year, which essentially guarantees that, hey, we can now afford an expansion team. Supposedly the league made 50 mil in profit this season as well. Thank you, Queensland government. So they've definitely got plenty of money floating around. So they were talking about we're going to make an announcement after the G Grand Final. There was chat today that a decision to introduce a 7 team has essentially been rubber stamped by the ARLC, and they had a meeting with all 16 clubs to say this is the plan, and they've gone, yep, that's good. So sounds like there's a meeting tomorrow, so Friday our time, to have a look at all the bids and essentially pick one. All money is on Redcliffe being the winners, the Redcliffe Dolphins. But they've been told they can't be Redcliffe going forward because Redcliffe, I think, has got a population of 56,000 people. They need to have Brisbane in the title somewhere so they can build up that rivalry with the Brisbane Broncos, of course. So whether they become the Brisbane Dolphins or the North Brisbane Dolphins, it'll have Brisbane in it at least. They potentially probably stay the Dolphins because I think the lower grades, all the grades underneath the NRL team will still be Redcliffe related and still be Dolphins related. So it's, be interesting. That's all male. I think the Firehawks and Jets have kind of, second and third now that they like Redcliffe. They like Redcliffe giving big money in their coppers. We'll hopefully see the Brisbane Dolphins or North Brisbane Dolphins joining the competition from 2023 with maybe Cam Munster at 6 and Wayne Bennett as head coach.
That'd be an ideal start for him as well. And maybe number 1 season ticket holder Peter Dutton. Saw the old Chrome Dome on the news today, holding up the jersey, obviously a Queenslander, and him getting around the possible expansion side. Don't know if that will do good or bad for their popularity, by the way, but did notice that.
The suburb of Redcliffe has a population of 10,000.
And the whole area is not that much because it's not quite Brisbane. It's right on the outer edges. But I suppose it does feed into that Sunshine Coast market as well. It's the gate to the Sunshine Coast.
Yep.
So will they try and spin something around that? Time will tell. But it seems like this is happening. There's going to be a 17th team, and it's going to be.
So the final bit of NRL news we need to cover off, and we mentioned before, was the retirement of Benji Marshall after 16 seasons in the top grade, 346 first grade games, the 8th most games ever. He did, of course, win that 2005 premiership with the flick pass that I think everyone remember him for with the Tigers, and he had 201 games with them. Followed that up with stints at the Dragons in Brisbane. And then he came down and joined Souths, of course, following Wayne Bennett to finish out his career for the last couple of years. Did have a bit of a late resurgence after, being let go with the Tigers. And then we went back to them and played a couple of years as well. So I don't want to say he's been a journeyman for a little while, but, to the back end of his career, he's been filling a role, definitely a role player for Souths coming off the bench, that veteran leadership for that team. But you can't go past the bloke that also played 31 games for New Zealand, was the face of the NRL at one point with the young talent coming through. Everyone wanted to be Benji Marshall. Probably for our generation, definitely. We coming through, we were like, hey, we all want to be Benji. We all want to put on a big left foot step, throw a flick pass behind the back. So, yeah, it's definitely been idolised by a lot of people growing up. Interesting note here, of course, when he was playing for Brisbane, he did play for the Redcliffe Dolphins. So, yeah, he's definitely been around the comp. I think there's a little doco currently on KO, so check out that on him as a bit of a tribute. But overall, stellar career. Didn't get the dream send-off they were looking for, but, classy as always. Classy in his press conference, wearing matching shirts with his son. Like, it was a fitting way to end a stellar career for him.
Yeah, indeed. It's I like that you mentioned, the Benji, the idolisation factor. I think we're not that much younger than him, which is the scary thing. But definitely going through high school when he was 18, 19, 20, and we were just that little bit younger, playing in the at lunchtime, trying to do Benji steps and Benji flick passes, and that would have motivated a lot of guys with some talent to actually make it to the NFL. And you do hear the stories. He's not quite Brady old, but you do hear stories of young blokes that get to play with him, and they're kind of in awe of getting to play with Benji Marshall. So hats off to him. An awesome career, 346 first grade games. That is unreal. And giving the Tigers a premiership. And let's be honest, since those days, the Tigers haven't been much scrap. They haven't made the finals for over 10 years. That's pretty much going back to when Benji was there the first time round, at least. It's obviously a big part in that club having a premiership to their name.
Yeah, and when he went back for that second stint as well, him and Robbie Farah almost carried the Tigers into the finals. So they couldn't get there in the end, but that was the best they'd done in years as well. So yeah, definitely, he of course being a West legend, add a bit of mystique, and the boys play for that, but West kind of don't have any of that at the moment. So
no, and to be honest, they are a bit of a shit show at the moment, which is a bit sad to see. I'll tell you what, though, just going back to Benji, a really well-spoken guy, and they get him on 360 once a week and knows the game in and out. Could definitely see him pursuing something media-related going forwards. Of Jonathan Thurston and Cooper Cronk come into the media. Cameron Smith's had a bit of a role as well in the podcasting world, and also in some commentary. But I would love to listen to Benji and get his insights. A very articulate man, and think he'd have a lot to offer from the commentary box.
Yeah, definitely, especially when they start doing international games again. Like, he's going to have that New Zealand perspective, and maybe some New Zealand bias in the commentary room would be okay over the full squad of Australians.
Yeah, talking about his youth days playing for Whakatane back in.
And with that, I think that wraps up the NRL chat for this week. And
I just wanted to go back. Oh yeah, just back to Melbourne here, boys. Put together one of the best seasons ever. Yep. Obviously didn't make the big dance. Were favored in the preliminary final. Went out to Penrith. Panthers get revenge, etc., etc. Where do we see them next year? Because they're going to lose Nico Hines, who had a breakout year and was, frankly, one of the best players in the comp this year. Addo Carr, one of the best wingers getting around, and apparently a real character around the club. And speaking of Dale Finucane, who's an old head and very wise. We spoke earlier about Munster possibly linked to a new franchise. Could this be a downturn in the Melbourne Storm, or do you think Bellyache and their systems in place, they just continue to be a red-hot side next year and going forward?
Yeah, they'll win the comp next year. But I was just thinking about it. When you talk about Addo Carr, and then I was thinking about, when have Melbourne ever had bad wingers?
Yeah,
They've always.
Vunivalu, Korobidi.
No, but Matt King, he's going back. Like I couldn't think of any. So,
Yeah.
since
And
Craig's been there, they just churn them out.
yeah.
Yeah.
And wingers probably don't win you a comp either. But I do think like the whole accumulation of losing Finucane and Hines, and if Munster was to go the year after, who knows? Again, there's probably just some kind of next man up. They'll just pull someone out of their ass. Like if we were having this conversation 12 months ago, I'd say, who the fuck's Nico Hines?
Exactly.
So yeah.
I think
Look, they've never been bad, so I wouldn't put my money on them being bad in the future.
Yeah, and then I think about like Finucane as well. I was like, oh yeah, he's a bit of a loss. And then I start thinking about their forwards they've gone through there. It's like, well, they had Welsh now, he's really good. They had Glasby there before Welsh, he was really good before he went elsewhere. And then you just go through the list. Like every time they roll someone over, they just manage to replace them with, let's call them role guys that actually do a really good role and then insert themselves into the upper echelons of elite talent within the NRL. Hey, we've said it. As long as Craig Bellamy's there, you can put money on them every year to potentially win the comp because, more times out of, I don't want to give a stupid statistic like 9 times out of 10, but more times than not, they will end up being in the grand final and winning the comp. So,
yeah. I think Roosters are probably a pretty good indicator of what could potentially happen for Melbourne next season. I don't think they do any worse than what Roosters did this season. But yeah, just like the Roosters, they've got a good system in place. They've got the brown paper bags in place. They'll be able to make it work next year.
Allegedly, Monks, allegedly. Except for those times that they did get caught and they got stripped of premierships.
Yeah. You got to remember, take the Roosters, for example. They finished, fifth overall with a reserve grade.
Reserve grade side all year. Yeah.
So, I think Melbourne can definitely turn out talent like the Roosters can, and they've got Craig there as a coach. They'll win football games.
Yeah.
They might not win 19 or 20 straight like they did this year, but they'll
still be very good.
They'll be very good. And it doesn't matter if you finish first, as long as you're kind of in that 4, you're always going to be within a shout of winning the comp.
For sure. I think we've spoken about it before on the Esky, but maybe the 17th and 18th sides in the league should just be Melbourne reserves and Roosters reserves.
Yeah. Well, if you're still going to recruit, start there. See if you can nab some guys on cheap deals and see what you get.